What's up, everybody? Coach Tony from Bonvec Strength, and welcome to the first edition of Ask Coach Tony, where I answer real questions from real people with better answers than you can give on an Instagram reel or a TikTok. So the first question that I'm going to answer is from Wallace, who commented on one of our Instagram reels asking, what if I can't tell what my weak points are because I'm stupid? Now, I appreciate the self-deprecation. Some people say self-deprecation is my best quality. I think it's probably my only good quality. But this was in reference to a reel where I was talking about needing to hate your supplementary exercises, because if you're choosing supplementary exercises, that is exercises that are squat, bench, and deadlift variations that build your competition squat, bench, and deadlift variations, saying that you need to hate them because they need to be something that you suck at. They need to be working on some sort of weak point. And how do you know what your weak point is? Well, I like to think of something that I can't remember whether it was Louis Simmons or Dave Tate or Jim Wendler or somebody from that greater West Side Barbell family tree said something to the tune of, you can't have any weak points if you're just weak, or like you don't need weak point training if you're just weak. And kind of a mean thing to say, but sometimes the truth hurts. If you're relatively new in your strength training journey and you just haven't really put up like really serious numbers yet, or haven't built like a ton of muscularity to the point where you might have, discrepancies between muscle groups, you may not have any weak or glaring weak points yet. You might just not be that strong overall, and you might need to train longer for harder for those things to come to fruition. And eventually I think they will become pretty obvious. We expect some degree of technical breakdown in any sort of really heavy, low rep, high effort lift, right? Are there lifters who can make 1 rep maxes look absolutely technically perfect? Absolutely, but they're, probably the outliers. They're probably the best in the world for that reason. So for those of us who are not the best in the world, there's going to be some degree of technical breakdown with those heavy max effort lifts. So how do you know what those breakdowns are? Expose yourself to those high loads, high level efforts. And I've spoken before about how newer lifters probably don't need to do a lot of, low rep, maximal effort training in order to get stronger. And I think that's true. And I think that holds true because you can build strength with lower loads and just simply work on technique as a beginner. But eventually that runs out, right? And as you get more experience, as you get more comfortable with technique and your technique starts to hold up under heavier loads, you're going to use heavier loads more often, and then those weak points are going to come out. So be patient. They may not be obvious right away. You may just need to train harder and longer for them to become obvious. And if you're really itching for a more specific answer, you can look for certain common weak points in each main lift, kind of depending on your technique, depending on your leverages. There are things that you're going to expect, for the squat, chest fall, weight coming forward out of the hole as you start to stand up, knees caving in. These things are fairly common and things that can be addressed with specific accessory exercises that address those issues. If chest falls on the squat, working on things like front squats, working on things like safety bar squats. If your knees are caving in, maybe squatting to pins or squatting to a box. You could try squatting with bands around your knees. But there's so much information out there about those common weak points. But if that weak point is not a weak point of yours, then, why waste the time working on it? If you want a really in-depth guide about how to identify certain weak points and how to work on them, shameless self-plug here, I have a really in-depth ebook that I released as part of my newsletter giveaway a while ago called Seek and Destroy, which is like over 100 pages worth of how to dissect weak points and how to prescribe exercises to address those. So if you're not already a newsletter subscriber, I'll put the link at the post description of this video so you can get in on that. But weak point training really only matters if you are strong enough to have weak points. And it sounds like a little bit of a cop-out because a lot of people want to know right away, but you have to train long enough and hard enough for those weak points to become obvious. So if you don't have any glaring weak points yet, just focus on getting generally stronger all around. Keep training the squat, bench, and deadlift, relatively heavy, challenging sets of 3 to 5. Improve your overall muscularity. Use exercises that we know are tried and true to build muscle mass and all the main movers and supporting structures. So make sure you do your upper back work, do lots of rows, do lots of pull-ups or pull-downs. Make sure you train your arms for the bench. Train the hell out of your triceps, train the hell out of your biceps, do your push-ups, do your dips, do those accessory pressing exercises. For your legs, obviously you need incredibly strong posterior chains, so glutes and hamstrings. So do your RDLs, do your leg curls, do your glute ham raises. Don't neglect your quads, right? Quads are number one for squatting, so make sure you do your lunges and your split squats and your leg extensions and leg presses if you have access to them. Train the hell out of your core, right? Core, it connects your upper body to the lower body and is often the missing piece for any big lift. So make sure you train your core in a variety of ways. Train the six-pack muscles, so do your reverse crunches, do your hanging leg raises. Train it for stability, so do exercises where your core resists movement. Do your planks and your body saws and your ab wheel rollouts. There's no big secrets here, right? All these things are super tried and true. They're things that lifters of all experience levels should train the hell out of. And if you don't have any glaring weak points, just keep focusing on the basics, keep focusing on those big rocks, and eventually you'll get big enough and strong enough and experienced enough where your weak points will be staring you right in the face and you'll have no choice but to address them in order to get stronger. All right, so I hope that answered your question, Wallace. If you have questions that you want me to answer in a future Ask Coach Tony video, leave them in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, and thank you for listening.